Today I'm going to make you my Mung dal two ways. The first one is a traditional dal that you can eat with rice and roti or just as a soup. And the second one is this one, which is a dry Mung dal that can be eaten as a salad or again with roti. You can also eat it with rice. But it's all going to be made at the same time, but two completely different tastes. Both easy, both delicious, very nutritious, very light on the stomach, very few spices, and very few ingredients. So come along with me as we make our Mung dal two different ways. To make this green Mung dal, I'm going to take 2 cups of the whole green Mung dal and soak it for about half hour. It's always a good idea to soak any kind of dal, even if it's for a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and just let it soak, wash it, and then soak it for about half hour. So our dal has been soaking nicely, and that's 2 cups of green Mung dal. And to make this dal, and I'm going to make this dal two ways. One is dry, which is like a sabji that you can eat with roti or rice. And then the second one is like a proper liquid dal. But one recipe will make 2 kinds of dal. So this is 2 cups of mung soaking for about half hour. And all we need to make both of the dals are some ginger slices, some chili peppers. These are optional. If you don't like spicy, you can leave this out. And then about 6-7 cloves of garlic. I know it seems like a lot, but it's going to cook with the mung and it's going to boil with the mung so that it's going to mellow out the flavor of the garlic. And then I'll show you how, once the garlic has softened, how we're going to use it. So go ahead and use this much. Now, if you really don't like garlic flavor, then you can use a little bit less. But trust me, the garlic really makes this dal very flavorful. And then to be used later, not during the initial cooking, I have 1 onion and 2 tomatoes. And that's all we need to make this very simple but really delicious dal. So let's get our dal cooking. So all I'm going to do is put this with some water and then all these 3 ingredients in the water so they will cook with the mung. So here's our dal in the pot. So for 2 cups of mung, initially I've added 5 cups of water. I wanted to keep in the beginning a little bit on the dry side so I can take out the mung for my first type of dal. And then I'll add some more water. But right now it's 5 cups of water, my ginger slices, the garlic, and the chili peppers. And they're all going to cook at a low heat until the mungs are almost soft. So it should take, these are the small mungs. You can get different sizes of mung. This is the small desi mung, so I think desi means like Indian. So it might not take as long, so let's see how long it takes. I'm gonna put my timer for 20 minutes and then we're gonna check at that point of how much more additional cooking time we need. So right now I'm going to put a timer for 20 minutes and I have not added any salt or any other spices. I'm going to let these cook for about 20 minutes and then I'll add my salt and other spices. Our mung has been cooking for about 20 minutes and they're coming along nicely. Now you can cook them quicker in a Instapot or a pressure cooker, but I like this slow method. I think it makes it really nice and silky, smooth at the end, and the flavor of the garlic and ginger really get infused in here. So at this point, I'm going to add some salt and turmeric powder, just those 2 things. So about 2 teaspoons of salt and 1 heaping teaspoon of turmeric powder. I've added my salt and turmeric, and at this point I'm going to cover this and cook for another 15 minutes and then we'll see at that point how the mung looks. So I've cooked already for 20 minutes. I'm going to put the timer again for 15, so that's a total of 35 minutes. So at that point we'll look at the mung and see how much longer we need to cook. So I'm going to cover it this time. and then cook for additional 15 minutes. Our timer just went off, and if I look at the mung, it's almost done for the first part. So I'm gonna take one out and just kind of squeeze it and see, and it's nice and soft, but like al dente soft. That's what I want. So at this point, I'm gonna turn the gas off and let it sit for about half hour, okay? Now, at this point, if you don't want to have the dry mung and you just want the dal, then you just keep cooking until the mung falls apart. But because I'm trying to make two types of dal from this, I'm gonna show you both. So I'm gonna just turn it off and let that mung sit in the hot liquid for about half hour. So the gas is turned off and it's just sitting now in the hot liquid for about half hour, and then we'll check it out. It's been about half hour, and you can see most of the water has been absorbed and the mung is cooked beautifully. So at this point, I'm going to take half of the mung out to make our dry mung sabji, and then I'll use the remaining mung to make the mung dal. So let's go ahead and take out half the mung and also the garlic, and then I'll show you first how to make the dry mung sabji. And you can see that I have left most of the water in the pan, and then here's my mung. I took out about half of the cooked quantity. Now again, like I said, if you don't want to make it the mung dal dry style, you can just cook in the way I'm going to show you, but otherwise you can do two things. The reason why I do it is, growing up, I never really liked dal, but I always liked, you know, the dal in a drier state. Like, you know, if you notice one of my recipes, which is the yellow mung dal with spinach, again, that is a very dry mung sabji style, and I've always liked that. So whenever I make this, I always take half of it out to make it like a sabji style dal. Now, I've also taken out the garlic, and if you see, the garlic has cooked beautifully. It is softened nicely, it has mellowed out. So even though it looks like a lot of garlic, it's not a very strong garlic flavor because it's just mellowed out. I'm going to use this to flavor the oil when I cook my dry mung sabji. So that's why I'm kind of smashing it, because I'm gonna put this in the oil and it will just melt in the oil and flavor the whole dish. That way I'm not getting any chunks of garlic, but I'm getting a really gorgeous mellow garlic flavor. So let's get started with our dry mung sabji. And with this, I'm gonna turn this back on and add 2 additional cups of water and cook this until the mung is very soft. Okay, so this is our regular mung dal. It's going to cook for additional 30 minutes until the mung is soft and almost melted in the liquid. So I added 2 cups of water. The ginger and the chili pepper still stays. And I'm going to add the tomato and the onion at the end, and it's called tadka. So it's going to be right before we finish the dal off. So this is going to cook until almost it's 90% done. And then we're going to add our tomatoes, onions, and then finish it off. But meanwhile, let's go ahead and see how to make the dry mung sabji. In this pan, I've heated about 1 tablespoon of oil. It's just regular canola oil. When the oil gets hot, I'm going to add a teaspoon of mustard seeds. And after they splutter, I'm going to add my garlic puree that I cooked with the mung. To check whether the oil is hot or not, I'm going to add a couple mustard seeds and They're not moving as rapidly as I want them to be, so I'll wait another few seconds before adding the rest of the mustard seeds. My oil is sufficiently hot, so I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of mustard seeds. And you can tell the oil is hot because the moment the mustard seeds hit the oil, they started spluttering. And then I'm going to add half of the garlic puree. The other half I'm going to save for the liquid bath. And all I'm going to do is just move this around a little bit and cook for about 30 seconds. I'm also going to add the hing or the asafoetida, just a sprinkle. That's it. And let's cook this around for about 30 seconds. The garlic is fully cooked, so we don't really need to do it. At this point, I'm just flavoring it, flavoring the oil so that the entire oil is nice and flavored with that garlic flavor. And I'm gonna go ahead and add my Mung. And that's it. This is a very simple recipe. There's no other extra ingredients that I add. So I'm just going to now add the spices, which is going to be, remember we already put salt in this, so make sure you taste it before adding additional salt. So all I'm going to add in this one right now is a little bit more turmeric, about half a teaspoon, 1 teaspoon of red chili powder, 1 teaspoon of coriander powder, and then about 1 teaspoon of the kasuri methi, which is the dried fenugreek leaves, and then that's it. And it's already cooked. The Mung is already cooked, so 5 minutes for the spices to blend together, and we're done with this part. So here it is. This is our red chili powder, 1 teaspoon, half a teaspoon of turmeric, about 1 teaspoon of coriander powder, and then 1 teaspoon of the dried kasuri methi or dried fenugreek leaves. Just gonna mix everything together and wait till all the spices have blended nicely and that little bit of liquid you see has been absorbed. There's not much liquid at all because when I took this out of the other pot, I made sure that not too much liquid came with it. I just kind of used a spoon and scooped it out. So this, again, also if you look at this, you can tell that the Mung is not softened so much that it will just like get blended. It's still very soft to the touch, but the grains of the Mung, so it's still kept whole. And that's how you want it if you're going to make it dry sabji style. I'm gonna cook this for a minute and this is done. So you can eat this with rice, you can eat this with roti, you can eat it just as is. I like to also put a little bit of raw tomatoes and onions on top when I'm eating. So eat it more like a salad. But this is so delicious and it's very tasty and very simple to make. It has that nice ginger flavor. It has the garlic flavor, but it doesn't have any chunks of garlic or ginger. So beautifully done. So I'm going to turn this off and we're ready for Mung number 2. So let's go and see how that's coming along. And here is my Mung. I'm cooking that, bringing it to a boil, and it's covered and it's going to cook for about 20 minutes. And you'll see the difference between how the Mung pieces look here versus in the dry one. This one should almost be broken so that it blends beautifully with the liquid. So I'm going to cook it. I'm going to put the timer for about 15 to 20 minutes. Let's try it for 15 minutes, check it, and then see if we need to cook any longer. Again, this looks like a long process, but the active time is very little. All you did was like put everything in the pan and cook it. So most of the cooking is passive cooking. If you're in a hurry and you want to make this, you can definitely make it in a pressure cooker or in the Instant Pot. but I like the slow cooking because I think the flavor just develops and it just tastes so much better. All right, so we'll come back in 15 minutes and check this out. And the only spices in here right now are the turmeric and the salt. We're gonna add the rest of the things, the onions and the tomatoes, almost at the end once the mung is cooked about 99%. About 90%. So it still has that last 10% to cook with the tomato and onion blend. While the mung is cooking, we're gonna go ahead and prepare the tadka or the masala that goes in it. And also just wanted to point something out. When you have a lid covered with the mung, make sure there's a little hole in the lid so that for the steam to escape, otherwise everything's gonna boil right over. And also once in a while, just kind of lift the lid a little so that the steam can escape and you're not gonna get a mess all over your stove. So mung is cooking and we're going to make the tomato onion mixture that goes in it. So I've chopped my tomatoes roughly, chopped my onion roughly. This is 1 onion. I'm going to cook that along with the garlic puree that we have saved. And then I'm going to, once the onions have cooked nicely, I'm gonna add the chopped tomatoes. So in this pan, I have 1 tablespoon of oil. You can also use ghee. And in that, I'm going to add my 1 small teaspoon of mustard seeds. Once they splutter, I'm going to add my onions and then cook the onions for a few minutes and until they soften, and then we'll add the 2 chopped tomatoes. I've added my onions and now I'm going to cook them until they soften a little bit. So there was nothing else. It was just 1 tablespoon of oil, 1 teaspoon of mustard seeds, and now 1 chopped onion. The onions are browning nicely. I'm gonna add my garlic puree along with about half a teaspoon of red chili powder, half a teaspoon of turmeric, and 1 teaspoon of coriander powder. And again, remember our salt is in the mung, but I still like to add a little bit of salt here to flavor the onion and tomato mixture. So I'm gonna add a little bit of salt to this mixture. So I'll give this about 30 seconds and then we'll add the tomatoes. So I roughly chopped my 2 tomatoes and I'm going to add that. Also, when you chop tomatoes, make sure you take the seeds out. It just makes it for a much smoother either gravy or any other curry that you make. So always take the seed out when you chop the tomatoes. So let's go ahead and add a little bit of salt to the onion and then add our tomatoes. So I've added just a pinch of salt. I'm not going to add any more salt until I've tasted everything together because remember we cooked our mung in a salted water in the beginning, so I don't want to over salt it. We can always add salt at the end, but we can't take it out. So this mixture is going to cook until the tomatoes are nice and soft and everything is cooked thoroughly. And then we're going to add this mixture to our mung, which is cooking. Let's go check that out. So here's our mung cooking, and I'm checking to see it's coming along nicely. If it gets dry too quickly, you can always add an additional water, but right now we're good. We don't need to add any more water. Now the way you can tell when a dal is cooked perfectly is the liquid in the top. You see how this liquid is? When it starts getting like nice and cloudy, there should not be like clear liquid. And the mung compared to the other mung we made, so let's just do a little comparison. So here's this mung, how you see how broken each of the mung pieces are. Compare that to this one when this is the whole pieces of mung. And that's for our dry sabji. Okay? But I want this mung to cook even further, like more softer, and you'll see what I mean. And then when it's cooked fully, you'll start seeing bubbles come to the surface, and the dal will get like this. So it looks like we've blended it, but we have not. It's just from cooking the mung at a slow pace. So it looks really good. I'm gonna cook it for a few more minutes until the tomato onion mixture is ready. The tomato onion mixture is almost done. So it's about 7 minutes from start to finish when I put in the onions and then the tomatoes. At this point, I'm going to put half a teaspoon of garam masala and then about a half a teaspoon of my kasuri methi. And then let this cook for another minute, and then our tomato mixture is done. So total cook time, it took about 8 minutes for the onions and tomatoes to cook thoroughly. And the reason why we do this separately is because once you add the tomatoes and onion mixture in the dal, you want it to be fully cooked. Otherwise, the tomato doesn't get cooked so nicely, and you don't want the taste of that raw tomato in the dal. So this way, when I just end it, all I have to do once I put this in the dal is that just cook it for like 5 additional minutes so that everything comes together nicely and I don't have to cook for hours, because this mixture is already cooked. Because it's very hard for the tomato and the onion to soften once you add it in the dal. So that looks great. I'm going to turn this off, and as soon as the dal is done, we'll add this mixture. So remember, all I want the dal to be cooked is about 90% done. This is what I was talking about when I said you want to see this bubbles forming to see what the dal is done. You see how beautiful this liquid looks? It looks like the dal has been blended and melted beautifully in the liquid. It has not been blended by hand. It's just natural breakdown of the mung pieces. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and add my tomatoes and then cook everything for about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, and I just added my tomato onion mixture. So let's put everything, stir everything so it's nicely blended. At this point, you can taste for salt and see if you need additional salt. If it's too thick or it looks too dry, you can add an additional half a cup of water. And because today we're eating this with rice, I'm gonna go ahead. So this is perfect consistency for eating with roti. But if you want to eat this with rice, you want a little bit thinner. So I'm gonna go ahead and add another half a cup of water. So Indian cooking is all about kind of, it's not an exact science. It's all about kind of a feel of how things look and taste. And that's why it's so hard to even get recipes from like my mom and stuff, because she has been cooking all her life just from the way it looks and the way it feels. So I can never get it narrowed down to exactly how much things to put. And I'm trying my best to show you like 90% of the process, exact process, but there's always going to be that 10% where the more you cook, the more you know whether something is done or not. So like I said, this is perfect consistency if you want to eat with roti, but because we're eating this with rice, I'm gonna add half a cup of additional water. Okay, our dal is done. And this is exactly how you want it to look. It's nice and creamy. There's no cream or anything added. There's no butter added, nothing. It's just because we cooked it slow and at low heat, it just became creamy on its own. The mung released all the natural starches, and look how beautifully velvety this dal looks. Okay, let's go ahead and plate this, and then we'll finish up this video. So I've added my half a cup of water, and I'm gonna cook this for 5 additional minutes, and then we're done. Also at this point, there's no need to cover it. Just let it cook. So it's just simmering on low for about 5 minutes. And then we're ready to eat. And here it is, our final dish, all cooked. So I have mung 2 ways. One is in dal form. You don't have to eat it with rice or roti. You can just eat it as is. It's very nutritious, very easy on the stomach. It has very light spices, but it's delicious. So that's one way to eat this. And then the second way is dry. And this you can eat even as a salad. You can add some raw tomatoes, onions, any other toppings. Avocado would be really nice. And eat it either with roti or just as is with some toppings on top. I would finish this off with some coriander, except I don't have any, and my husband refuses to go to the store until he's had his lunch. So there we have it. No garnishes today, but normally I would garnish this with a little bit of nice chopped coriander. But nonetheless, the dal looks delicious. It is delicious, healthy, simple, and this is also very delicious, healthy, simple. We made both of this dal in one process. You can make all of it this way or all of it this way, or you can make both if you want 2 completely different tastes. So please go ahead and enjoy this any way you want, with roti, rice, or just plain as it is. It's delicious no matter how you eat it. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe and share this video. And I hope you enjoy making my mung dal 2 ways. Have a great meal.